All right, let's talk about sidechain compression. All right, so today what I want to talk about is how to do sidechain compression with both the stock compressor in Pro Tools, so that's the Dyne 3 compressor limiter, and then I also want to talk about how to do it with Fabfilter's Pro-C2 compressor, because that's what I usually use for this. They're both good plugins though. A lot of the stock plugins in Pro Tools are really good, so don't think that you have to go spend money on plugins necessarily. I like to kind of live by getting to know the tools that I do have and then slowly growing my collection rather than just going out and getting them before you fully understand what you have already at your disposal. So before we start, I just want to define what sidechain compression is. And that's basically, you can do any kind of sidechain processing. And so sidechain compression is when we do that specifically with compression. And when you're doing sidechain processing, what you're doing is you're taking audio from track A and it's going to control processing on track B. So in the example of compression, what you're doing is you're taking the audio from track A and you're controlling the compression that's on track B. So some examples of this, like in the wild, so to speak, are, if you are driving in your car and you're listening to music with your phone, right? And then you get I don't know why I use the example of driving in your car, because it can work outside your car as well. But let's say you get a text message and your music is playing. And what happens is you'll notice that for the beep of the text message, the music gets a lot quieter and then it comes back up. And if you listen really critically, a lot of the time, I'm sure it depends on the phone, but you can hear the music continue below the beep. It's just gotten very, 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 very quiet. It's hidden below that beep. It's just for the moment of that beep, it gets way, way quieter and then it comes back up. And that way you don't miss a beat. So if you're like bouncing with your music or singing along, you don't miss a beat from that beep. It hasn't paused the music and then started it again. It's brought it down for the duration of that. So of the duration of that beep. So that's an example of sidechain compression in the wild, right? The software of the phone is programmed so that when that beep goes, it is compressing the music. So in this example, right, the beep is track A that is controlling the compression on track B, which is the music. Another example is, if you listen to the radio ever and you hear towards the end of the song, the DJ comes in and starts talking, right? And they're kind of talking over the end of the song. You might notice that a lot of the time the music gets quieter as soon as the DJ comes in. And that's not because there's someone there manually pulling the faders necessarily. Or I hope that's not happening a ton. But rather what they have is they have a compressor on the music and it's only keyed to actually function when the actual DJ microphone gets signal. So that's the DJ microphone is track A that is controlling the compression that is on the music that is track B. So that's the basic idea of what sidechain compression is. A lot of the ways that we tend to use it in music and mixing is to kind of let things make room for other things, right? So the typical example is, if the kick comes in, we want the bass to be compressed for the moment of the kick hitting, and then that allows the kick to kind of pop through more. A lot of the time we do sidechain compression on a ton of stuff in a beat, for example, so it can kind of like ebb and flow with the kick, with the beat, and it gets more of that, for lack of a better word, that vibe, right, with the beat of the music. So we use this a lot with music. We use it in film. Sometimes we will sidechain compress other things in a film soundscape to help dialogue pop out more. So the dialogue will control the compressor that's on, the sound effects or the music or what have you, and just have like a subtle ducking there for you. So those are some examples, but let me know if you have any questions or comments or other ideas in the comments below. I love hearing it. There are a million different ways you can use sidechain processing and sidechain compression. I also have a video already out on my channel somewhere, so I'm going to link to it with the cards, I believe. But basically, the other videos about the difference between parallel compression, sidechain compression, talking about what ducking is, and then talking about sidechain and parallel processing. So if you want more of a comparison between these things and defining them more clearly, I would recommend checking out that video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to do it more. So often at the beginning stages of a beat, at some point, I will add a kick drum, right? That really drives the beat. It's a pretty central component to most beats, right? So often I'll be making a kick at some point in the early stages. So in this beat, I have actually, and this kind of evolved over time, I didn't initially have a dedicated kick drum here, but I have a kick drum that I have incorporated, and then I also have a drum beat. So there's a drum beat here. It's just a drum loop. I'm going to turn down this audio zoom so you can kind of see it better. And what I have is I have the drum loop, and then I have duplicated the drum loop, and I have EQ'd this so that it's the low end, the kick, that's being represented in this track specifically. And a lot of times when I do this, I will do it just for sidechaining. So you'll notice this track is called Kick Only for Sidechain. And then what I'll do is I'll mute the track so you don't hear it. But for some reason, I brought it back in. I think maybe I wanted that little low end boost. So I added it back in, and I added an effect and stuff to it. So yeah, but that's something that I'll do if, for example, I don't have a separate kick. And then sometimes I will then decide, which is what happened here, to boost that kick with another kick sample. And a lot of times when I do import a kick drum and then place it like I have on this track, I'll have two different kick samples that I like, and maybe one I like the low oomph for it, and then the other one maybe I like the snap to it, and I'll EQ them accordingly and kind of blend them together to create my own, I don't know, custom kick. So those are just a few things you can do. But the point is, at some point you have to decide which kick track or what kick track you want to have going out as a kick bus, right? So here I have this track is sending out the kick bus, and that's because I don't think there's any iteration of this kick where this one is not also going. So this is my kick bus. I'm sending it out. I have it on pre-fader. So that means, for example, if I mute this track, or if this track gets soft muted when I solo other tracks, this will still be going out that kick bus. So all you're doing is you're creating a send, and you can pick a bus number and just remember that number, or you can have a kick bus that's actually named here. I have a video all about how to rename these, so I'll put a link to that in the description and maybe a card on the screen for you. But you're just picking a bus, right? Just remember what the bus number is. So in this case, it's kick bus. And you create that send, you make a pre-fader, and then sometimes I will match this fader level to here. Sometimes I'll leave it hot. I'm going to return that to 0. You can also option and click on something to return it to 0. So if I hold option or alt, then I click on it, it goes to 0. So now you've created this kick bus that's sending out the signal to this, nebulous bus location. And so now all we have to do, right, that is we've set up that track A that we were talking about earlier that is controlling the signal. And so now all we have to do is we have to pick a track that is going to be compressed. That's going to be the track B that is being compressed by track A. So I have this synth loop here. I can see that I already have sidechaining on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, let's look at this. So here's the track. Let me play it for a second. I had to kill the cat 'cause my thoughts got the better. So what I can do is I can solo this synth loop. Let's see, is it playing? Yeah. And you'll notice that even though this kick is soft muted because I've soloed this guy, this is still sending signal out. So if I hit play, you can see it sending signal out. So that's why I do this pre-fader option here. You can also then solo the kicks and listen in context. Just kind of create a little loop here. Make sure I'm loop playback. Yep. So I do have this already in place here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass this one, and I'm going to show you with the stock plugin. So this is without the sidechain compression. And now I'm going to add in, where is it? Avid's Dyne 3 compressor limiter. So what you want to do, there are two things that you have to do. First, you have to tell it you're not going to behave normally. I want you to do sidechaining. So the way we do that with this plugin is we click on this little sidechain key input button. And so now it knows I'm not listening to the audio on this synth track. I'm listening to the audio somewhere else. And now you have to set the actual key input. So that's where the bus comes into play. So you click here where the little key is and it says no key input. And then you choose bus and then you pick your kick bus. So mine's kick bus. And now it's going to be listening to that kick. So when I hit play, you'll see that this is only active. The dot only moves around when the kick is actually kicking. So I'll hit play so you can see that. And so now with something like this, sometimes I like to turn up the knee a good amount. I like going kind of crazy with the knee. And then I don't, with compressors, right? A lot of times we're bringing down the loud stuff and then bringing everything else up. And that's to even out the dynamics. But in this case, a lot of time you don't necessarily want to add gain because you're just trying to make it quieter when the kick comes in. So I'll set my threshold. And with this, you kind of want to play the game of, if you want it to be more pronounced in effect, you set the threshold lower so that it that kick passes that level sooner and it gets more of a ducking effect, more of that sidechain compression. And if you want it less dramatic, then you set it higher. Then I also like to turn up the ratio, maybe somewhere around here. I like to mess around with the attack and release. I like to listen to like the click of this coming back in if there is a bit of a click. And then I like to listen to how pronounced it feels and mess with the threshold. That's how I tend to do it personally. And then sometimes if you want to really hear the effect, you can unsolo that kick drum and then listen to it with and without. You hear how it's ducking down with those kicks. So, if that felt like too much to me, I would listen to it in context as well. And if that feels like too much to me, maybe I can set the release to be faster, right? So it stops compressing down a little bit faster. Or maybe I want to set the threshold higher. These things just kind of mold the way it brings the sound down and then back up. So, I'm not going to go into a ton of the details on how a compressor works because I believe I have another video about that. But let me know if you have any questions about that in the comments below. The big thing with how to do this is to tell it, hey, I want a sidechain, and then to set that input. And then you just set your parameters. So that's how you do it with the stock plugin. It's a lot of fun. Now I'm going to show you how to do it with the Fabfilter compressor. So with this one, what you want to do is you want to open up this sidechain option here. And this is internal, this is external. So you're telling it, hey, I want you to listen to an external source. So that's like pressing that key button on the other plugin. So you got to do that. With this, there's a lot of fancier controls that you can dig into. I'm just going to show you the basics here today for the sake of time. But you do that, and then you just have to set the key input. So it's the same thing here, kick, bus, right? You want to go and choose that kick bus, and it's already done that for me. So that's the basic idea, right? There are two things you have to do. Tell it to listen to something else besides what's on this track, and then choose that input, that key input, pick your bus, right? And then it's the same idea, a lot of times what I like to do is I'll kind of mess with the ratio. Usually I crank it up to around here, attack and release values. That's how fast it's warming up and then cooling down. When the kick drum goes above and below that threshold, you can adjust the ratio. So see how this is coming through really hot? So what I might even do on this is bring it down, But what you want to do is if you're going to adjust this level of the kick, to deal with this whole situation, then you want to do that early on in the game. You don't want to be doing it later and then have to adjust every single iteration of sidechain compression in your piece. So just keep that in mind if you're going to do that. But a lot of times I do like to reduce this kick level so that, when it comes through, you can kind of see the upper range of it and it's not maxing out your threshold. So it just gives you a little bit more control over where the threshold is. It changes where that range is for the threshold, so to speak. But, again, it's the same idea here. You're just messing with these parameters until it sounds how you like. Sometimes, it'll get a little clicky if you're not careful. You just want to mess with these parameters. And the big things that I look at are the knee. That's how soft this curve is. If it's a higher knee, it's a softer curve. Lower knee, it gets more of an angle there. See that angle at the threshold? Your threshold value, how loud the kick has to be for it to kick in, for the compressor to start, right? Your ratio value. So a lot of times I'm around 5:1 here. But it depends on what you're doing, right? Depends on what you're doing. And then attack and release value is how quick it warms up and then turns off, so to speak. And then the other thing that I do with this plugin is I turn off this auto gain because it drives me crazy. It's the bane of my existence. I would rather be the one controlling the gain. So I turn off that auto gain every single time. And that's basically it. That's how you can run sidechain compression with both the stock plugin in Pro Tools and this Fabfilter compressor. And I believe the other versions of this compressor are pretty similar too. So I hope that helps someone out there. And as you use this, you'll start to understand how the parameters affect things better. And I would just encourage you to try it, use it. The more you use it, the better you'll get at it. Use your intuition, use your ear. People have all kinds of rules, but it never holds true for everything. So just have fun, use your ear, trust your guts, and I hope you have a blast with it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'd appreciate all of that stuff. I have a Patreon, so it's patreon.com/CatoNoise, and my patrons get access to additional content. Mostly what I've been focusing on lately are early release videos and then a Discord server that we're hanging out on, chatting about audio. There's an audio engineering book club on there. We've been having a lot of fun. So if you feel so inclined, check that out. It's patreon.com/CatoNoise. And I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you so much for hanging out. Okay. I think I'm going to do a shootout video soon between a mic mod that a friend made that's supposed to sound like a U87, or it's similar to a U87. He has 2 modes for it. So I believe it's a capacitor that he changes, and it can be either brighter or darker. I've tested out the mic a little bit so far, and I like it. I like the sound of it a lot. It's in the darker mode right now, which is probably what I'll prefer, knowing me. But I'm getting a U87 to compare it to, so I'm borrowing one. So that video should come out pretty soon. That's going to be a lot of fun to film and then listen to and think about. So I'm excited for that. But I don't know what else to say. I guess I'll talk to you soon. Yeah, it is a capacitor.